Okay, this is going to be a day trading weekly recap from the first day of August to the fifth day of August, and I had a total of 11 trades. 9 of them were green, which made it a really good winning percentage rate for this week. But the problem was is that I did not trade a lot of these setups according to a $40 risk level. I was close. And what I've been doing is that when I'm in a setup, I calculate what's the worst case scenario place where I would be selling, and then I try to find the right amount of shares accordingly. But once I'm done with the trade and I'm putting it in my records, I go back and I look at the chart and see what actually is a more realistic point. If there was a more realistic point where worst case scenario could have happened and I'd be selling my shares, and it's always been a bit lower than where it is most of the time. I'm trying to work on trading accordingly to a $40 risk level because this is the first week that I moved up to a $40 risk level, and I would have been much more profitable this week with the trades that I had, even considering all the good things and the bad things that I could do to get better. I could have been much more profitable this week, and there were a few setups that were missed, especially with SIRC, a few morning panic bounce play setups. Overall, it wasn't too bad in terms of the stats. I would have liked to have seen better percent gains, but there were some of these where I kind of got in and out, and I didn't really, make that much. They were just break-even trades for the most part, which would affect the stats. But I do like how I had this, amount that I made this first week, but I could have made so much more. Again, just one reason would be that I needed to have more shares. So, for example, this one, I had 80 shares. If I had 100 shares, this would have brought my dollar risk level to 40, which is what I'm trying to stick to, and that would have allowed me to be more profitable with just this one trade, for example. So overall, pretty cool. I had my first short in a long time, which was pretty awesome to be a part of. And yeah, let's go over the trades one by one, starting with EMGE. And I just noticed I don't have Thinkorswim even loaded. Let me load that first. All right, the charts are loaded. Let's look at EMGE for the first. I had one trade with EMGE on this day. And the first is going to be right here. A very nice green candle because it shows that it's breaking past this 34, 35-ish level where it was resistance for a while. I broke past it, and then this could be something where it's going to have a continuation, ideally a setup in the morning. The first is going to be right here. And I was in at 942 at 39 and a half, and this was first dip under VWAP. So 942, 39 and a half. 942 was way back here at 30, I believe 39 and a half was my entry right around here. I'll zoom in a bit more. Why was I in this setup? I didn't like the way it traded, but I like how it had a morning spike from the 37s as high as the 41s. I missed out on, I think, the breakout right here at 39. I did miss out on this one. And then I also missed out when it broke past 4 cents. It got a little higher because I thought, if it's going to break the round number of 4 cents, it might have a lot more momentum afterwards. I could push it even higher. But at least I did partake in this dip under VWAP. But as you can see, this looks very ugly the way it kind of had a nice morning spike, but then it just had this one ugly candle that sold off way under VWAP, and then I got in right here at 395. And the problem with this trade was that I wanted to be in at like 391, 392, and 395 was the very top of my limit, and I didn't feel comfortable being in this setup right under that breakout level of 4 cents because I thought, if this thing fails, I'm at the top of my limit at 395. This thing can head back down, and now I'm going to be selling in the 38s if I'm lucky, or maybe even in the 37s or something even bigger if it's going to be, a morning panic. So that was the case with that one. I got out at 9:43 the next minute at 396. So 9:43 was right here at 396. I got out for just a tiny gain. This was just a scratch. I got out. Even though it did uptrend and get to the 41s, it was just something that I wasn't comfortable with because I wasn't in ideally where I wanted to be in. And I didn't like how, I thought, okay, worst case, I'm going to be in right here at 391. And they had this very ugly red candle. But again, it just kind of threw me off. And we were right under that resistance level since it got under it of 4 cents. Although it did make a move later. And that was pretty cool. So yeah, this thing worked out. I'm very happy with the way I traded it, even though if I just held, I would have been able to have been more profitable because I really thought that there was a high chance, it would just fail under this 4 cent level. I'm not in at the best price, and then it continues to downtrend because it just had a very, big morning spike and it might start to sell off. The next trade is LKNCY on the first as well. Let's look at LKNCY. And the first is going to be right here. Very nice downtrend from the 15s, and it even got as low as, it might have gotten as low as the 10s, if not, like 11, 10 or something like that, super low. And this was actually the turnaround day. It did kind of bounce back, but at the time, I did trade it right here on the first, and that was back here. I was in at 10.06 at 12.12 and a half. 10.06, I'm going to zoom in a bit more. Right here, 10.06 at 12.12. Why did I get in it? Very easy, inverse head and shoulders, has a downtrend, and then it makes the shoulder. Right here is the head, and then it makes the shoulder. I'm in at this point right here at 12.12. Worst case scenario, we start breaking under this 12.06 level, which is nice because it's not like the level the break and fail would be 12, and then, oh snap, we're going to get under the round number of 12, and now we're in the 11s. This thing was actually, a bit higher at 12.06, and I thought this was a pretty nice setup because, an inverse head and shoulders is a change in momentum. So then we had this panic, the momentum changes. We have a low right here, a lower low, but now we have that higher low. That's like the basic fundamentals of the inverse head and shoulders. This is a very nice, clean example of one. And I look forward to trading the next time I see something like this. And yeah, that was my buy at 12.12. I did get out at 10.13, and that was at 12.23. I'll say 12.24 was my average at 10.13. Was right here when I got out. It was around this 12.24 level. And I think I saw my last piece when we were getting above VWAP, because that's always the goal, VWAP. And this one did get a bit higher, but I was just very happy to sell at VWAP. Not extremely sure if it was going to even get there because of the fact that this thing has been selling off for the past few days, so it might not have much momentum. But the inverse head and shoulders did it, and this thing did get as high as this 12.40 level. And yeah, that was a pretty good trade for what it was. My only regret, and this was a missed setup, is that I could have actually went short LKNCY because, as you can see, the trend line, or at least in this case here known as VWAP, it's showing that it was failing to hold above VWAP, and as you can see, it was starting to lose, its highs. Its highs were starting to be smaller, and then less consistently above VWAP, and then it started the downtrend. And this offered a really, really nice panic. It went, as you can see, much lower from the 12.20s, and it got as low as this 11. Okay, 11.11 level. This was a very impressive downtrend. This would have been a very profitable short and something I could have shorted on Schwab because it is a higher priced OTC. And, it's something that Schwab had available to short. And it also did this nice turnaround. I can't, ignore this turnaround either. I noticed that I just slightly moved the charts a little. Guess I can't really be able to change it right now, but this was a very nice turnaround. This could have been something I could have traded. I missed two very easy setups here with LKNCY, which is why I knocked some points off of myself on that day. Yeah, pretty good inverse head and shoulders, but I would have liked it if I tried at least the short or maybe even the dip buy right here. Once it showed that it was showing a change in momentum, you can see a trend line right around here following it. Kind of far away from where I would consider it. Maybe something like this. You see, this follows a trend line, and then it breaks past it, but then it comes back under, and it downtrends. But it never got below the trend line again, and then it was consolidating back and forth, and then once we saw that it was trying to make like a leg up, this would have been a nice entry at 11.37, and it got to the 12s. This would have been super profitable, and yeah, two very nice setups that I missed out. At least I traded the inverse head and shoulders with LKNCY. Let's look at the next trade, EMGE for the second. Second is going to be right here, big red day after it was uptrending. Let's go ahead and highlight it, which is right here. I was in at 933, 321, and this was a morning panic bounce play, gap down, morning range breakout. So I'll try to put that in the regular English. 933 at 321. I'll zoom in a bit more. 933 was right here at 321. I got in at this point right here. So why did I get in this trade? I got in it because it had a gap down, and I thought, okay, it had a gap down. It's not panicking, but you know, it is trying to trade back and forth, but you know, it looks like it's trying to break the highs right here at 33, and I'm going to be in right here at 321. And the wicks, you know, this one is shorter than this one, shorter than this one. It could be something that could try to turn around. And then we have that morning spike. It did not happen right here. As you can see, it did downtrend and it broke this level right here, and it got a little lower. It still managed to hold itself together, but the setup that I was initially in for did not work out. And I got out the next minute, 934 at 312, which was this candle right here. 312 is when I got out. I was in at 321, and it just didn't work out. It didn't break the range right here, right off in the very start of the day when, you know, it has the gap down. And it might show like an immediate reversal, a bunch of dip buyers or something like that. It didn't work out there, but it could have worked out. And then I did trade the next thing, which was now, you might think is the same setup, but it's different. I was in at 935, excuse me, 939 at 315. Right here, 939 at 315. Why was I in this? This is no longer the thing that I tried back here. This was now a dip and rip. It kind of had the, you know, gap down, and then it dips right here, and then it's trading off of VWAP. And I'm in it because it looks like it's going to break the range here. We're already above VWAP, and it can do a morning spike, which, as you can see, this clearly happened right here. And I did not trade this one very well. You see, I marked it as a no, as in did I trade it well? I didn't. I got out at 947 at 32.85. That was my average, 947, 32.85. So I was out right around here was my average at 947. If not, I think I sold everything there. Yeah, I did two things wrong. Number one, I sold everything at once when it was starting to work instead of maybe a quarter of my position. And then number two, I did sell all of my position here because of the fact that I wanted to make back what I lost initially in this first trade right here. And I thought at this point, okay, this is well above what I would have lost in the first trade. I'm going to cut it right here. It didn't help that I was in it kind of early in the setup at 315, and I could have been in at 31 very easily later on. And it was just taking some time. It was trading back and forth. It was kind of nerve-wracking, thinking that maybe it's going to downtrend some more. And it didn't. And once it started to work, I sold everything. And as you can tell, it got as high as almost 37. So I left out a lot of money on the table, not because I didn't, you know, do it wrong. Actually, no, I did do it wrong. I did it horribly wrong, but I didn't do it the right way and thinking, oh, okay, you know, like it had a trend line and, you know, I'm getting out because it failed the trend line and I'm cutting it. No, I just sold because I thought, you know what? This is going to make back what I lost on the other trade and some profit. I'll be out of the trade. I was already feeling uneasy because I wasn't in at the best price. In my mind, I could have been in at 31, and I was holding on through this chop for a while, so that wasn't good. I could have sold maybe a quarter of my position instead of all of it, and then I could have sold maybe the rest once it broke the trend line. That would have been super profitable, maybe a sell in the 35.6. That would have been very nice. Let's just see what it would have been like if I sold at 34.5, because that's something that I could have actually have done. It's not like best case scenario. See, I would have made just under 10%, 13 bucks, and that would have been a lot more profitable. But at least I learned a good lesson, and that's something I need to you know, get better at. But you know, at least I still took the setup right after I had that other setup that didn't work out. At least I did that, but clearly a lot of things I could have done better with that. And just a reason why, again, I want to go over all the mistakes I did, because I noticed that I'm starting to get better overall at trading, but I still see a lot of things I need to get better at. Let's look at the next trade, which is on the same day with EMGE. I was in at 10.07 at 293. Right here, 10.07 at 293. Right around right here is when I got in. And just to confirm, the setup was a downtrending trendline break, reverse long near day low. So the idea is that I got in right here because I had some kind of a trend line at the time, a downtrending trend line, and I saw that it was probably breaking the line, I would probably do it something like this. I'm not extremely sure how I had it at the time, but I'm just guessing. You can see this is very similar with LKNCY, that, it had this downtrend, and then it tried to, get above it, which it did right here, but then it immediately came back under, but it never got below the trend line, and then it was doing the consolidation here. Very similar to LKNCY, but you can see this one didn't work as nicely. And again, I was in right here at this level around right there, and I did get out at 10:08 to the next minute at 3:01. Right here is when I got out at 10:08. 3:01 is when I got out, and the reason why I got out of this one, because this one just felt weird with the price action. I was in at a pretty good price at 293, but we broke past the level of 3 cents, and it just felt like something was off with the price action. I expected like more momentum once we break the round number of 3 cents. It just didn't do that much, and I got out thinking that, this thing trades back and forth with a spread. This might be like the upper part of the price action, and now it's going to transition to the lower part. It just didn't feel good. And as you can see, it didn't uptrend like LKNCY did, and I got out because something just fell off, and that was a pretty cool call, and it did get much lower, and that was a trade right there. Let's look at the next one. This is an 11 a.m. reversal long after inverse head and shoulders trendline follow and break. So that's a very wordy one. I'll try to go over it. I was in at 11.25 at 27. So 11.25 is when I got in. At 27, this is when I got in right here. And the idea was that you can see the inverse head and shoulders, the shoulder, the head, the shoulder, it had one. And now we were starting to get higher lows, which was ideal. And then there was also this downtrending trend line that I must have had drawn maybe like from this point. I'm not extremely sure at what point it would have been anymore, but I clearly had some kind of a trend line, and that thing was failing. Maybe something off of right here. Just to go over, my entry was at 11.25. So yeah, I'm not sure how I had the line, but it did break past this line that I just made right here that might not be according to the way I had it when I was trading it. I use eTrade Pro. I don't necessarily use Thinkorswim as my platform for viewing charts, so I'm not as accurate, I think, with this, but that was the idea, and it was also around the 11 a.m. time period where a lot of stocks that are down on the day eventually turn around. It doesn't look like much. It looks like a bunch of, just low priced price action, but 27, it got to VWAP at 30. This thing was actually pretty profitable, but I didn't trade it as well as I could have. I got out at 11.40 and my average was 27 and a half. So 11.40, I was right at right here, 27 and a half basically is when I got out. My risk level was I believe 27 breaking once it was starting to show that it was going to hold the level, and I think there were people supporting 27, but worst case I was going to get out for sure if we were to start breaking the day low. And even though I got in at a pretty good price and everything at 27, it never broke my risk level, but I just got so tired of holding it. Again, I got out at 11.40 and I was in at this 11, I think 11.25 ish level. What was it? Yeah, 11.25. This thing got to VWAP and it never broke under my risk level. So this was another trade that I didn't trade as well as I could have, and I could have been much more profitable. I could have even have sold maybe half of my position and then just held the other half, so that if it didn't work out, at least I sold half for break even, so I don't lose as much. Let's just see what it would have been like if maybe I sold some at 27 half, and then the other half, let's say I sold it at 3 cents, so maybe I would be kind of in the middle. Let's just say 282, what that would have been if I sold there. Again, a very realistic thing that could have happened, and I would have been much more profitable. $6 compared to $2, and that's taking into consideration that maybe I sell half of my position and then I sell the other half when it starts working, instead of maybe selling everything on the way up as it's working. Not cutting half of the position that never broke under my risk level. So another trade that I could have done much better with. Let's look at INND for the 4th. And let me remove these before I forget because then they don't really disappear and they kind of just linger around. IND is right here on the 4th. And it doesn't look like much, but it was actually starting to break past this 12 level after I had this uptrend right here and it was going back and forth. It was very nice that it broke 12 and then we were having the next day. The 4th is going to be right here. I was in at 956, 126, and this was a second dip under VWAP. So 956 was right here. I'm going to zoom in a bit more. Right here at 956, 126 is when I got in. I liked it because, we just had that breakout. This thing still had momentum. It had a downtrend under VWAP for the first time, and I like how it touched the breakout level. I wasn't here when this happened, but I like how it touched the breakout level and it held and it turned around and it went from the 12s to the 13s, which is pretty nice in terms of percent differences, say percent. Even though, it could be much higher, it could have uptrended and broken past VWAP and went higher. It at least got to the VWAP line. And then when we had that second dip, I got in at 126 for the same reason. Now thinking that it's not just the second dip under VWAP, but it's also higher than this level. The bottoms here is higher than the bottoms here, and we had a wick, and now we don't have a wick. So I thought there was more positive bullish momentum that would make this second dip under VWAP get to VWAP at least, and then maybe even get above it, which it didn't do right here. I did get out at 10:02 at 1276, so 10:02 was right here, 10:02, and I got out. My average was 1276, so right around right here is when I got out with my average, because I think I did sell this one in pieces. I think I sold some on the way up, and then I saw it doesn't look like it's going to break VWAP in this trade, so I got out the rest. This was a pretty good trade. It just didn't offer that much more, and it did downtrend more, as you can see right here. But this was a good trade for what it was. It was a great attempt, and it seems like right here I traded perfectly, which isn't necessarily my goal to trade exactly a $40 risk level. I kind of want to be around 35 to 45 right now, but this was a good attempt. It didn't offer that much opportunity. It could have, and I had the right amount of shares, and I had a proper risk level. Just to go over, I thought my worst case scenario would be 11, so I thought, maybe it's going to fail right here, break the level, start to do a big panic, and then it gets to the 11s. And as you can see, it didn't have a big panic later. It got pretty close to 11, so I think that was fair for what that was. A very close guess to what worst case could have been. Let's go over my short trade with SIRC, and that's on the 4th. The 4th is going to be right here. Pretty nice big day, and I missed on a lot of setups. I missed out on a lot of setups with SIRC, but at least I had this short right here. This thing ended up being pretty profitable. I was short 1,300 shares at 1028 a.m. and that was at 42.11. So 1028 was right here at 42.11. I'll probably just zoom in a bit closer. That's pretty much going to be around this point again at 42.11. I shorted for multiple reasons. I think the main reason why I shorted was this trend line, this uptrending trend line. And as you can see, this thing was following it. Okay, I did not mean to remove it. It was following it super nicely. And the idea is that, it was following it, and then we kind of broke under it. And then it was trying to regain itself, but it wasn't able to. And then at 1028, there was already some significant distance from this line right here. I was short my position here, and I thought worst case scenario, I'll be cutting it if it decides to try to break the day high. And then, I've seen that happen where maybe something breaks the uptrending trend line, kind of trades back and forth a little bit, and then it immediately tries to get right under it, or if it's really strong, it gets above it and regains itself. But that wasn't the case. I was short right here, and then we also had this thing that it was showing that it was up multiple days in a row, and I thought there could be a situation where it could be something that would downtrend, and if I were to zoom back on this chart, it was also starting to approach like some pretty, at least to me, significant resistance levels on the daily chart. Again, it's not really visible here. I have to zoom back, but essentially I thought there was going to be a lot of resistance playing off of this level. It immediately downtrended, but I did hold on to this one, and I got out at 11.12 at 39.8. So 11.12 was when I got in. Right here at 398, right around right here. Why did I get out right here? Well, I was holding through it, and I had like 50 trend lines trying to see, where this thing might be heading towards. But the idea is that 40 cents was a very important level of support, and it held it here, it held it here, it held it here. But then once we broke it, this was great. It broke under 40 cents and it was getting into the 39s, but it held VWAP. And it would have been ideal if we broke the round number of 40 cents and downtrends, and then we break VWAP, and then we have all this momentum, and it starts to really panic, and this will be a super profitable trade. But what happened is that we broke the 40 cent level, but it held VWAP, and I didn't like how it was holding it. I thought it was going to be a lot of momentum because we break 40, and it's going to push its way into breaking VWAP as well, just under 40 in the 39s. It didn't do it, and because it was showing that it was holding, I got out. I also knew that this stock was probably very easily shortable in most places, considering the fact that Schwab had shares to short and it was a higher priced OTC. I thought this thing could squeeze very easily, and I saw a lot of times that it was trying to squeeze shorts, or at least it was trying to make a very cheeky and quick and dirty turnaround and break the day high. So that was the case with that, and I'm very happy that I got out here because obviously it did eventually break the level right here. My only regret was not considering logging the setup. Once we did break the high right here, or maybe even when it showed that it was holding VWAP, because this would have been like the first dip towards VWAP. And yeah, two more setups were missed in that sense, but this thing was still pretty nice in that I tried shorting it and I made 16 bucks, and I also had to pay just under $14 in commissions. Obviously, without that, I would have made much more, but I'm very happy to pay the commissions there because it gave me the opportunity to make the money here. And yeah, that was a pretty good trade for what it was. And even though it doesn't show that I was close to my $40 risk level, I still put a yes because I traded 1,300 shares, which was the closest amount that I could have traded, but not break my account in terms of the $2.50 rule. So in theory, just to go over the rule, when you're shorting stocks that are cheap, there's kind of like this rule where each share is like worth $2.50 in terms of collateral. So you can't short like a sub penny with a whole bunch of size without having a whole bunch of collateral. So the idea is that 1,300 shares times 250. This was very close to the amount of money I had available on my Schwab account, so I wasn't able to short, for example, to have a $40 risk level, maybe, I don't know, 1,500 shares. Let's see what that would be. Actually, no, that would be a lot. 2,000. This would have been it. So 2,000 times 250. I would have had to have had a $5,000 account to be able to short the proper amount of shares, and that would have been much more profitable because I'd have more shares and I would be accordingly to that $40 risk level. But I traded the most I could, considering that $2.50 rule. I had like I don't know, like $3,800 in that account. So that was the case with that. I did try to get as close as I could to $40, so I just couldn't because of that rule. Let's look at the next trade, which is AOPP on the 5th. Let me remove this right here. The 5th is going to be right here, and as you can see, very nice. It's uptrending, and this was also another setup where I missed out because I saw the break past 90 cents. It had a top here, and then it got to the round number of 90 cents. I just totally missed out on this one. Another setup that I missed out on, although this one is not necessarily something I do too much, where I kind of hold something for multiple days. The 5th is right here. I got in at 9.55 at, I'll just say 103. I'm going to zoom in a bit more since it didn't do very much. Right here at 103 is when I got in. And why? Well, very nice uptrend, and then it was going to downtrend, and it was holding $1.02 so nicely. I wanted it to get under VWAP, but it was holding it so nicely that I thought, you know what? Maybe this is going to be the kind of stock that has a very aggressive spike. It downtrends, but it never touches VWAP because it's that strong. And then it's going to turn around, and I'm in right here at 103 for the ideal move towards the upside, and then maybe it breaks the high, and then it continues to keep going after it's been running up all these days and probably shorting, not shorting, but squeezing a bunch of shorts. This one didn't work out. I got out at 957 at 101. 957 is right here, right when it started to break the day low. Not the day low, but the low of the range right here, and I got out at 101. It did eventually dip under VWAP and it turned around, but the range was no longer that good. I could have been in maybe at $1 and then it got as high as 102, which stinks. I mean, I could have tried it. It just didn't work that much. It just kind of didn't do much more afterwards. So you can see the rest of the day it was kind of just trading back and forth. It wasn't really anything nice. It kind of lost its momentum. Next trade is CYDY for the 5th. This was another scratch, I believe, and this was another dip under VWAP. The 5th is right here. First red day would have ended up being, but it could have been one of those things where, it opened a bit higher, as you can tell from this candle. Maybe it downtrends, but then it regains itself and opens, not opens, but closes very strong. You can tell that I don't have that much sleep, even though it's on a Sunday, when I should ideally have slept in and caught up on my sleep. I was in at 1032 at 115, and this was a first dip under VWAP. 1002. Did I say 1002? 1032 at 115. Okay. 1032 was right here at 115, and I got in because it was a dip under VWAP right here, a dip under VWAP, and I liked how, it downtrended right here, a dip under VWAP, but it didn't do much because it was a big seller at 17. It pushed the price action just a little lower, and now we were trading off of this wick right here at 114, which at the time had a whole bunch of support. So I thought, okay, this is great. It had a dip, it failed, it dipped a bit lower, but it got to the wick, and there's a lot of people supporting 114. Now it's going to do it, and it's going to make a move, get to VWAP, ideally get above it, and then maybe even put a bunch of higher lows afterwards. I held this one for a while. I got out at 1043 at 15.5. And what happened is that I just held on to it for a pretty long time. It was starting to turn around an uptrend, and it was turning around because there was a big bidder that showed up, and it started to push the price action. You can see this was like a very quick reaction to when a big bidder showed up, and then it started to trade back and forth right here. And then we saw the big seller at 117, which brought it down here initially, come back. So now there was a big bidder and a big seller at the ask, and I didn't like that. I got out. I didn't want to just play in a 50-50 gamble as to whether it's going to break 117 and uptrend more or break below, the bidder and then a downtrend. So I just got out right in the middle. Still managed to sell a little higher than where I got out, but this was another scratch, although it did offer one more dip higher than this level. This is something you can call an inverse head and shoulders, even shoulder, head, shoulder, and then it got to 120, which was above VWAP. Not much range in this stock. It just didn't offer that much range. Better than ALPP, but not much. Last trade, TRRI for the 5th. This one was pretty crazy. Huge uptrend, and then it also just traded with a big spread. This was the day right here. Thinkorswim doesn't even have the other charts loaded because it probably didn't trade anything those other days. I was in at 1107 at 153, and this was a trend line break reversal long. So 1107 was right here. I'll probably just zoom in a bit more. Yeah, that looks a lot nicer. Right here, 1107 at 153. Why did I get in? Another trend line break. If it lets me draw the line. I'd say something around here. So you can see, super crazy uptrend from this 58 cent level all the way to the $2. Didn't see this on the uptrend, I think. Oh no, I actually did, but it just gets to a point where it breaks a point where you would have been long, and then it just keeps going, and now you don't want to chase it, and then you see how much higher it keeps going. You can even draw a trend line right here, and that just shows how explosive this one is, and that's it lets me draw it. Something like this, right, is the uptrending trend line for this, and then it just got to the point where it started to get aggressive. It was following this line very nicely right here, but then it started to get at an even elevated pace, and that was pretty impressive. And then it did turn around, and I was in, if I can remove this first, I was in right here at 153 because it looked like it was going to break past the trend line, the downtrending trend line, which could have been a sign of a change in momentum, and then it would start to uptrend again. And I was in it again at 153 right there. I got out very quickly. I was in this trade for 55 seconds. I got out at 163 the next minute, and I got out because it just shot up. I didn't like that. You can see there's a gap right here. I would have liked it if it just uptrended slowly, showing decent price action going towards the upside. And when I sold right here, I didn't like that. It just had to jump, and I just don't like it because if it has a big jump like that, it might also just jump down just as quickly and easily. I wanted it to uptrend very gradually. And when I sold right here, I thought I might be missing out on a lot of money if it just, has this jump and now it's going to start going crazy again towards the upside. I was actually, right to call it right here and cut it. And it did continue to downtrend some more. It did do a dip under VWAP here, but this was a lot nicer once it was showing that. Maybe a trend line like this. Maybe something like this. This is not, the most super accurate idea, but it got nicer once it was starting to, show this downtrending momentum right here off of the highs here and the highs here, even the highs here, and then it started to continue to follow the line, but then it caught itself and it was holding it. And then once it was starting to show that it could try to go towards the line, VWAP, and maybe get above it, this would have been a very nice entry at 115. And then it did get as high as the 150. So that was a lot of profitability in that trade. And that was a setup I also missed right here. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this week. I could have sold some setups a lot better, and that would have made me a lot more profitable. On top of that, there were setups that I missed out on, but I think at least I'm trying and I'm still learning and I'm gaining experience from my W's and more importantly, my L's. And ideally, I can continue to get better. I'm going to stick to the $40 risk level. There's a lot of things I have to get better at, but that's it for this weekly recap right here.